What's up everyone, Tony here, and today we are going to take a closer look at the all-new Unreal Engine 5 real-time tech demo. I'll break down everything in the video that caught my eye, and then I'll put on my speculation cap and brainstorm just what exactly this tech demo is potentially telling us about the next generation as a whole, and what we could possibly expect to see from some specific next-gen games. Now, this demo is supposedly running on real PlayStation 5 hardware, and it was actually planned to be playable at GDC before Sony ultimately changed their mind on that.
You can actually play that with a controller, like that's not kind of frame dumped or anything, that's actually playable?
Fully playable demo, and
wow.
We plugged in a recorder into the back of a PlayStation 5 dev kit and recorded the signal that came out over HDMI, so it's a totally live demo.
If that is in fact true, and this is the kind of standard graphical fidelity we can expect from the next generation of games, then I think we could all agree it's time to get hype, because this is just the beginning for next gen. Visuals will only improve from here, believe it or not. When it comes to reveals, we still have the whole rest of this summer to go, and over that time period, we are going to get a ton of new next-gen footage. There are already rumblings of a PS5 focused event in early June, and if some of the teams I'm expecting show up and share their upcoming next-gen projects, then I legitimately think there's a chance that this summer we see real games that look better than this already mind-blowing Unreal Engine 5 tech demo. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Today we're going to focus on Unreal Engine 5 because, man, there is a lot to take in here from this video. The reaction has been absolutely out of this world, especially from devs themselves. I think this is really our first good look, not only at what next-gen hardware is going to provide us from a visual standpoint, but also a gameplay perspective. It's also made clear the dramatic changes to the overall game development pipeline, and how a lot of assets will be made, or really no longer made at all. At last, we see the power of these machines overall on display, but perhaps most importantly, we see the power of these much hyped, super fast SSDs. If this tech demo is any indication, it's the speed of these hard drives that will drive the incredible new look and feel of games in the next generation. When put in perspective, the jump provided by the SSD is dramatic, to say the least, with some even speculating that the new possibilities provided by the incredible read and write speeds could result in the biggest change to the way games are made since the jump to 3D, as crazy as that might sound. So first, let's quickly go through the video, and I'll point out the things that really caught my eye. Obviously, the very first thing we notice before the character even moves are the graphics in general. As someone who has spent thousands of hours with Red Dead Redemption 2, a game I safely consider the best looking game ever made, this is pretty much at that level visually, if not above it in some ways, which is nuts for a small tech demo. Just a reminder, Red Dead Redemption 2 is the most expensive game ever made, with a team of thousands made over years and years with a budget in the hundreds of millions. We don't even need to dig into any of the technical terms thrown out in this video, much less understand what any of them mean, because it's already clear to anyone with functional eyesight that this looks ridiculous. We are already operating at a level around, if not above, the heaviest hitters of the current generation, like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Death Stranding. Those games were already approaching photorealism in some places, at least in my mind. If that level of visual fidelity is exceeded when building a game in Unreal Engine 5, we are in for a very special generation. With all that said, let's dig into some of those technical terms and understand what they mean. There are two main concepts on display here in the tech demo, features that look to drive game development forward into the next generation. First up is Nanite, a system that promises to bring film quality assets to the next generation of games. These are assets consisting of billions of polygons. For reference, Kratos in God of War on PS4 looks pretty good, right? His model is made up of 80,000 polygons. Now isn't that just adorable?
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
With next gen, we are now in the millions of polygons per model range. As a result, developers can now simply drop a film quality asset into the engine, and it just works. There's no difference from the source model, at least no perceptible difference that the human eye can see. From what I understand, the so-called render everything you ever saw pipeline, a concept dating back to the 80s, and has until now been used to render CGI in film offline, is now possible in real time with video games thanks to Unreal Engine 5. Basically, let's say a film quality model consists of 10 billion polygons. Rendering all 10 billion polygons would not only be too taxing for the hardware, but you wouldn't even notice many of the details these polygons make up, because so many of those polygons are smaller than a pixel. It goes beyond the "you ever saw" part of rays, because you don't see detail that small. So Unreal Engine 5 promises to take these film quality assets and draw everything down to a pixel, which is what we're seeing here with this crazy visual. In other words, every detail your eye can perceive from the film quality assets will now be there in the video game, with no need for devs to go out of their way and lower the level of detail to make everything run properly. Nanite takes those billions of triangles and crunches them down instantly to about 30 million triangles, with 8K textures, which is nuts and I hope doesn't take up too much space on our hard drives. The end result is it looks damn good, as we see when the character squeezes through this gap here, and even close up, these rocks look crisp as hell. We see the power of Nanite on full display here with these highly detailed statues. One statue in this tech demo consists of an already unbelievable 33 million triangles. Then we enter this room where there are 485 of the same statues being rendered all at once. That's about 16 billion triangles in total in this one scene. For reference, about 3 of these statues being rendered at the same level of detail would probably make a PS4 Pro crash. It can't be understated just how much of a jump we are witnessing here between current gen and next gen. On top of all that, we see a new lighting solution on display called Lumen. Simply put, Lumen is like ray tracing, but not quite ray tracing. We see light bouncing off objects in real time in a very realistic manner. This kind of dynamic lighting isn't even possible on current gen hardware, which had to depend greatly on static, baked lighting. Everything just looks fantastic all throughout the demo, but perhaps the best look we get is at the beginning, where we can see light shining into this cave here. With Lumen off, it just kind of sits on a single spot. When turned on, the light bounces off that ground and illuminates the rest of the cave, and it all looks so good. In the end, Lumen marks a huge leap forward for lighting in games, even if it is ultimately an in-between solution. While not as perfect as ray tracing, it's also not as expensive. We already know we'll see games take advantage of ray tracing next gen, but expect some developers to go with Lumen instead, depending on the game being made, and perhaps if they want to chase a higher frame rate or resolution, not possible with ray traced global illumination. It's also important to mention that this tech demo is running at 30 frames per second and at 1440p resolution. Now, I think a lot of us felt it was a given that games would mostly run at 4K and 60 frames per second this generation. But at the end of the day, this will always be a thing for consoles. Devs will always have the option to push visual fidelity harder and harder at the expense of resolution and frame rate. It seems like for the visuals Epic wanted to achieve here, 1440p was the way to go. Going forward, I'm sure we'll see some insanely beautiful games next generation with tons of crazy effects, absolutely pushing the limits of what's possible, but running at only 1080p. And of course, we'll see games running at 4K as well. Some running at 30 frames per second, others at 60, and others at 120. Just like we saw this generation, the resolutions and frame rates will be all over the place depending on the game. But honestly, this tech demo looks so good that I'm not really crying about the lack of 4K at all. In the end, I think we should keep 2 things in mind here. First off, most games will get ported to PC anyways, where higher frame rates and resolution will always be an option if you have strong enough hardware.
PC. Oh, wow.
Secondly, thinking even further ahead, are mid-gen refresh consoles. The PS5 Pro, if you will, and I guess Xbox Series X? X squared? X2? Yeah. If Unreal Engine 5 is pumping out games of this quality and running at 1440p on PS5, I'd expect to see the very same games running at 4K on those mid-gen refresh consoles. Personally, I'd rather see devs push visuals to the absolute limit, even if it means sacrificing resolution in the process. After all, resolution is always something that can be increased in time with more powerful hardware. If games need to render at 1440p to look like this, then that's totally okay with me. Finally, the tech demo ends with what is, to me, the most important scene in the entire video. Our character leaps and flies across the environment at a breakneck speed before landing at a portal and ending the demo. It obviously looks pretty, but what this scene is really doing is flexing the muscles of the new super speedy SSD found in every PS5. Thanks to the insane speeds that absolutely crush what we're used to from prior generations, streaming in assets will no longer cause issues.
I think that's going to have a much bigger impact on gaming than people are expecting right now. Previous generation console games had to be built to load data off of a spinning mechanical device, right? It has its roots in the 1950s. Sony's storage system is absolutely world class. This is going to enable the types of immersion that we only could have dreamed of in the past. The world of loading screens is over, and the days of pop-in and geometry popping up as you're going through these game environments are ended, and the resulting effect is the ability to build games that are fully immersive from start to finish over hundreds of hours of gameplay if that's your game.
Developers no longer need to resort to certain tricks just to hold the world together. Everything just works at full detail and looks great. The character is covering all of this ground at a super high speed, and there is no pop-in at all. These issues absolutely plagued just about every open world title this generation and in prior generations, and now they're completely gone. Thanks to the nanite system, there is no longer any polygon count budget. That means there's no longer any need to create separate, low level of detail assets or low poly models, which have been around since Mario 64. Again, even the very best looking games of the current generation have to put up with low LOD assets popping into the scene if you move too quickly. With Unreal Engine 5, pop-in is gone entirely. The fully detailed assets are just there, always, and this is going to do so much for new open world titles. There's no longer any need for artists to go out of their way creating low LOD assets, and that should speed up the game development process pretty drastically as a result. This is absolute insanity, and again, I'll point to my developer friends who are all collectively losing their shit over these revelations. This is truly game-changing stuff when it comes to how games are played and how games are made. I'm going to go into further detail in a second on how I think this aspect in particular will shape some next-gen experiences, but for now, I'll say this. Honestly, the new possibilities born from the super fast SSD is what I'm most excited about going into next gen. Not the lighting or the amount of triangles making up a model, but that damn hard drive. We already have unbelievably good looking games on current gen hardware, but this we can't do anywhere. To me, this is the real big jump we'll be experiencing with the next generation, and I'm super excited to see how these new hard drive speeds sparks creativity from my favorite developers, because they're chomping at the bit to design a game and a giant world that takes advantage of this new tech. So many things that were simply impossible before now become possible. So now that we've gone over some of the insane, groundbreaking features Unreal Engine 5 brings to the video game landscape, we have to ask, why does any of this matter? My favorite games run on other engines, so why should I even care about what the Unreal Engine is doing? Well, quickly, we should go over a bit of Unreal Engine history to get an idea of the impact Unreal Engine 5 could truly have on the next generation as a whole. Then we'll get to speculating and think about what games specifically could be impacted by all of this new tech. Very quickly, Unreal Engine is pretty much the go-to game engine in the video game industry, at least when it comes to AAA games. It was designed and developed by Epic Games, who you might know as the guys who make a little game that's pretty popular. A couple people play it, I guess. gets like celebrities doing live concerts in it and stuff. You know, it's just a little game called Shadow Complex. But yeah, in my mind, Unreal Engine really took off during the Xbox 360 era with Unreal Engine 3. This was the engine that ran Gears of War, probably the best looking game ever when it was released back in 2006. It is insane just how many games ran on Unreal Engine 3, like the Mortal Kombat and Injustice games, BioShock Infinite, the Mass Effect trilogy, the list goes on and on. Unreal Engine 3 powered AAA games for a good 10 years, well into the current generation, when Unreal Engine 4 really took over. And it was just more of the same. Tons of AAA games this generation run on Unreal Engine 4 and look fantastic. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Gears 5, Street Fighter V, and even my beloved Dragon Ball FighterZ, which I think really showed how flexible the engine could be, bringing scenes from the Dragon Ball anime into video game form unlike any other Dragon Ball game that came before it. It wasn't just an engine capable of pumping out ultra-realistic graphics. Now, just for comparison's sake, I think it's important to take a look back at the original Unreal Engine 4 demo that was running on real PS4 hardware and compare it to this new Unreal Engine 5 demo that is running on real PS5 hardware. The PS4 tech demo was released at a similar time relative to the new console's release, March of 2013, just months before launch. And this is what it looked like. I remember watching this and at the time being absolutely blown away by what I was seeing. The same way this Unreal Engine 5 tech demo is blowing me away as I watch it today. Yet, here we are at the end of the PS4 generation, and by today's standards, this tech demo is hilarious. Graphically, games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Death Stranding take a complete dump on this tech demo. Like, it's pretty ugly. Like, looking at it today, this is pretty ugly. Let's be completely honest here. So what I'm saying is this. As good as the Unreal Engine 5 tech demo looks today, I don't think it will be long before we see real games not only match this level of graphical fidelity, but indeed surpass it. In fact, I believe by the time Guerrilla Games shares footage of Horizon Zero Dawn 2, or Insomniac gives us our first glimpse at Spider-Man 2, this tech demo will look outdated in comparison. In the end, Unreal Engine is known mainly for its ease of use, and while it has produced some absolutely great looking games, it's safe to say that the very best looking games on the market aren't actually running on Unreal. It's these in-house engines that really push the hardware to its absolute limits. So while this Unreal Engine 5 tech demo looks good today, and I'm sure some absolutely beautiful next-gen games will be created using Unreal Engine 5, ultimately, I don't see Unreal Engine 5 as this ultimate realization of next-gen. Instead, it's more like the baseline. All of the biggest games are going to look at least this good. Awesome features like Nanite and Lumen will become ubiquitous and incorporated in some way into all of the other big engines once they make their jump to the next generation. In short, I think it's really time to jump on the next gen hype train. Because as gorgeous as this tech demo is, the very top tier PS5 and Xbox Series X games are going to look and perform even better once devs truly wrap their heads around the new hardware. So, with all that in mind, we have our first good taste of the next generation. Drastic changes are coming to not only the way games are made, but also how they are played. How can the elements we've seen in this video, elements that will likely penetrate the entire video game landscape going forward, actually manifest in new games coming next generation? Well, obviously the possibilities are endless, but here's just a few ideas that instantly came to mind. First up, next-gen character models. We are hearing a lot about film quality assets becoming a reality in games thanks to Nanite, and they've shown us some beautiful environments and statues in this tech demo, but what will top of the line living and breathing characters look like next gen? Allow me to get my hopes up way too high. Can we expect Thanos from Infinity War levels of fidelity? Or what about the Hulk? Actors' faces have already been scanned into games this generation, and they look incredible, but how much better will they look next generation? They keep throwing out film quality this and film quality that, but man, movie CG has come a long way. Characters like the Hulk and Thanos are basically photorealistic. Like, if I didn't know any better, I'd say these monsters were real and not created by computers. Look at that face! Look at that face! I wonder if it becomes feasible during the next generation to see these models of famous CG characters from the movies transferred into video game form. Or will there still be a tangible drop-off in how the models look compared to the films? Oh, what I'd give for a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 with character models that looked like this, or this, or this, or this. Capcom, please.
Hyper combo finish! KO!
When it comes to environments, I don't doubt that the static CG environments used for film or TV production will come across nearly identical in next-gen games. For instance, we have The Mandalorian, which was actually shot using Unreal Engine technology, and man, those environments look lifelike. It blew my mind watching the behind-the-scenes features and learning that it was all, in fact, rendered in real time in Unreal Engine. So is Thanos possible, or are they just throwing around a bunch of buzzwords here? I want to believe, but resources are not infinite, and eventually something's gotta give, no matter how powerful this hardware may be. We'll just have to wait and see on this one. Another thing that has me super excited after watching this tech demo is how character traversal in an open world game will change with next gen. And boy will it change. Those final few seconds of the tech demo just blew me the hell away. As we went over, assets streaming into a scene too slowly will no longer be a concern. There is no more distracting pop-in, and no more need for low level of detail models. Everything just looks great all the time. So of course, the first thing I thought of was Grand Theft Auto. What was once a frequent issue, especially when driving the fastest vehicles in the game, will now be gone going forward. I'm also hoping this means vehicles in general are able to move faster in future GTA titles. With streaming assets no longer a concern, really there should be no cap at all on how fast any vehicle can speed through the city, as long as you could stay in control and not crash into anything. Thanks to the power of mods, we can easily see how fast the very fastest cars in the game are moving, and even in the PC version of GTA 5, issues like pop-in, draw distance, and distracting asset streaming is unavoidable. But also with mods, we can remove the speed cap, at which point the shortcomings become very clear. The current generation hardware and Rockstar's Rage engine as it existed at the time simply can't keep up. Going forward though, these are the kinds of speeds I want to see from a next-gen Grand Theft Auto. Oh baby. Just for fun, I tried out this UFO mod for Red Dead Redemption 2 to see if the newest incarnation of the Rage engine, tuned specifically for the current generation, stood up any better than the GTA 5 version. And the answer, as you could see, is no, not really. Now, this is definitely overkill for a game like Red Dead, where you travel on horseback as opposed to super fast sports cars, bikes, and planes. I'm traversing from one side of the map to the other in like 10 seconds at this speed, but nonetheless, there's a point to all of this. Come next generation, even moving at such a ridiculous speed, I'd expect the game to keep up, with the entire map loaded at all times. If we do get a theoretical enhanced Red Dead Redemption 2 port that takes full advantage of next-gen advancements, I'd expect near instantaneous fast travel and the entire other side of the map to be loaded in instantly, or at least super quickly. Damn it, Rockstar, these are totally realistic expectations. All I want to do is zoom across the map at stupidly high speeds in a UFO and not be taken out of the authentic 1890s Western experience by a world that doesn't load quickly enough. Speaking of zooming across the map at stupidly high speeds, we need to talk about some of those superhero open world games. Because really, that's exactly what that final sequence was. Look at those moves. I immediately thought of the possibilities for a potential Spider-Man sequel. Outside of the obvious stuff like a fast travel option that is actually fast, I fully expect a new Spider-Man game to feature even faster, more physics-based swinging, since the assets can now load in fast enough to keep up with Spidey's movement. I love Spider-Man on PS4, but with some tweaks that can now be made possible with the super fast SSD, a potential Spider-Man 2 on PS5 would easily be one of my most anticipated games, period. I also think the time is now finally right, after years and years of rumors and speculation, for a AAA open world Superman game. With next gen, we could potentially finally control a Superman that actually feels like Superman, flying across a giant open world with no issues due to slow streaming speeds. I would love to see an open world Superman game that really shows off his power and speed in a way that feels true to the character. And yes, he would need to be moving at this kind of speed. At least that's how I always imagined it in my head. Work your magic, Rocksteady, make it happen. And really, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. My mind was absolutely racing with ideas after watching that Unreal Engine 5 reveal. It looks so good, and I just wanted to quickly get a couple of thoughts out there and share my immediate impressions and feelings on what this tech demo can potentially tell us about the next generation of games overall. I can't wait to see what the most brilliant minds in the industry manage to come up with when taking advantage of this incredible new tech. I hope over the next couple of weeks and months, we get more and more next-gen games revealed, and perhaps some of these concepts teased in the tech demo may actually come to light in some gameplay videos or trailers. If you like this video and want to see more hype coverage of the next generation of games, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, check out my recently released feature-length video where I explore the similarities between Cyberpunk 2077 and GTA 5, and really CD Projekt Red and Rockstar Games overall. Cyberpunk promises to be not only one of the biggest titles this generation, but next generation as well, with a next-gen enhanced edition already confirmed. I'll be covering the big Cyberpunk reveal in early June here on the channel, but in the meantime, if any other big next-gen news comes up, you better believe I'll be covering that here as well. There are some rumblings of a huge PS5 blowout event happening in early June, and I'll just say if that ends up being true, it'll be the event to end all events when it comes to megaton announcements and sheer hype. Sony's kind of been holding back for a while, and the time is now for them to really bring it. There is no doubt it is going to be an exciting summer for games, but until next time, thanks so much for watching everyone, stay safe, and take care.